www.offthecorner.net. You're watching the FACT Project, and FACT, of course, is an acronym that stands for Fundamental African Centered Thought. The goal here on the FACT Project is to convey some thoughts and some information to members of our community. Today, we are going to talk about the case and the situation involving journalist Mumia Abu Jamal. Now, I have slated to join me today a guest that has yet to arrive, so we will hope the guest is going to join us shortly. But either way, Mumia Abu Jamal, for the people that don't know, was a journalist, and he was doing a lot around exposing police corruption in the Philadelphia Police Department. And the Philadelphia Police Department was not too keen on the idea that Mumia was not only doing radio programs, but publishing newspaper articles detailing the corruption and the impropriety that the Philadelphia Police Department was involved with. And so, on the night of December 9th, 1981, Mumia was involved in an altercation with the police and was subsequently arrested. What followed then was a avalanche of corruption and poor handling of the evidence. I mean, the list is long. Either way, for a long time, the public and supporters of Mumia Abu Jamal have campaigned for his release because many of us, myself included, feel as if Mumia Abu Jamal was wrongfully convicted. Mumia Abu Jamal was officially, or originally rather, known as Wesley Cook. That was, as we say, his government name. If anyone is in the chat, you have any questions, I will do my best to answer those questions. Either way, Mumia Abu Jamal, and this is coming from the internet. This is Google's AI overview. And I always tell people to be mindful of what they're reading on AI. I say AI could really stand for actually incorrect, because the information is not always that right and exact. This, however, is kind of vague, but I didn't see anything here that was false. It says Mumia Abu Jamal's story is centered on his 1982 conviction for the 1981 murder of Philadelphia police officer Daniel Faulkner. Now, let's see if I can play a piece of video to update people on the case, and so you have some background on it. It says this was an event that sparked a decades-long campaign for his release based on claims of a flawed trial and his innocence. And so many people that were close to the situation were saying that the trial was unfair, and for years they have campaigned to get him a new trial and admit the evidence that was omitted in the original trial. He was sentenced to death, but has since had his sentence commuted to life without parole. So originally, Mumia Abu Jamal was convicted or sentenced to death for the 1981 murder of one Mr. Daniel Faulkner. And we're going to come to that in a minute. Because his supporters were so adamant about his being removed from death row. He was actually removed from death row and was put into general population in the prison and was given life without parole. It says he was sentenced to death, but has since had his sentence commuted to life without parole, while supporters and organizers like Amnesty International cite evidence of bias and injustice. Law enforcement and others maintain his guilt and the trial's fairness. A central point of controversy in his case. Now, I would point everyone's attention to a documentary. It's online. It's called Manufacturing Guilt. If anyone wants more information on the trial in the case of Mumia Abu Jamal, I would definitely direct your attention to Manufacturing Guilt. The 1981 incident, this is talking about the incident. It says, on the morning of December 9th, Mumia Abu Jamal, then a taxi driver, witnessed a confrontation between Officer Daniel Faulkner and his brother. Now, I think we need to dig down a little bit more to understand the story of Mumia Abu Jamal. Mumia Abu Jamal was a member of the Black Panther Party. And he actually rose up in the Black Panther Party to become a prominent leader in the Black Panther Party, which caused him to be surveilled and infiltrated and spied on. And a lot of that is where some of the problems that he experienced stem from. Mumia Abu Jamal was born Wesley Cook on April 24th, 1954. He's an American journalist, author, and activist. I think it's important to always say that, because when they tell the story of Mumia Abu Jamal, they somehow gloss over the fact that he was a journalist. It says in this piece that he was convicted of the 1981 murder of police officer Daniel Faulkner and was sentenced to death after decades on death row. His sentence was commuted to life in prison without parole in 2011, and he was moved to general population in 2012. A controversial figure, Abu Jamal was a founding member of the Philadelphia chapter of the Black Panther Party. Now, not only was he a member of the Philadelphia Black Panther Party, he was a founding member, helping to establish the Black Panther Party in the city of Philadelphia. Of course, that was seen as a problem. And he was also a radio journalist before his arrest. He has continued to write and publish books from within prison, maintaining his innocence and advocating for social justice. So Mumia Abu Jamal, since having been incarcerated, wrote All Things Censored and any number of other books. He also continues to do his radio commentary, and he continues to do journalism work from behind the wall in prison. He was influenced by the Black Panther movement and became a member of the Black Panther Party in Philadelphia, where he served as Lieutenant of Information. He worked as a journalist for various stations, including NPR. So he was not just a guerrilla journalist, just out here winging it, not really getting any real traction as it relates to journalism. He did journalism for various stations, including NPR, and was president of the Philadelphia Association of Black Journalists. Mumia Abu Jamal, in his journalism, interviewed many luminaries, not the least of which was Bob Marley. If I could find a photo of him and Bob Marley, I will post that picture. He was also, like I said earlier, exposing police corruption in the city of Philadelphia, which is why the police department has such a huge problem with him. It says his activism included supporting the MOVE organization and working as a journalist. I had Queen Mother Pam Africa on a while back, and she talked about the MOVE organization and mentioned Mumia's support of the MOVE organization. In 1981, in December of 1981, he was arrested and charged with the murder of Philadelphia police officer Daniel Faulkner. He was convicted of the murder and initially sentenced to death. So Mumia was he was having a hard time finding work as a journalist, only because of his activism around police brutality. And not just police brutality, but police corruption and misconduct in the city of Philadelphia. And because of his journalism and his activism against the police department, Upon his arrest, they realized that they had none other than Mumia Abu Jamal in their custody. And after that, it was downhill for Mumia Abu Jamal. I'm trying to share my screen here. We're going to try to see if we can go to a little bit of a video before we bring our guest on. And she's going to speak at length about the case of Mumia Abu Jamal, as well as give us an update on his health condition.
It's been well established over the years that Abu Jamal's trial was patently unjust. For instance, the Philadelphia DA trained prosecutors to exclude blacks from juries. In Abu Jamal's case, 11 out of the 15 preemptory strikes were made to bar blacks from his jury. What this short film will document is how countless due process violations began just moments after the shooting of Daniel Faulkner and Mumia Abu Jamal, when members of the Philadelphia Police Department began to manufacture Abu Jamal's guilt and, perhaps more importantly, conceal his innocence. In the culture wars that have punted Mumia the effigy back and forth across ideological fields of politics, race, and class, the attempt has been made to diminish the relevance of Abu Jamal as a journalist in 1981. But this man, who was elected president of the Philadelphia chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists, was already well known throughout the city as a fiercely independent up-and-coming journalist. In fact, by the age of 15, the FBI was tracking the young writer for the Black Panther Party through their draconian and illegal program known as COINTELPRO, not for violent behavior, but because of his, quote, inclination to appear and speak at public gatherings. Also, in 1981, he was well known to the Philadelphia Police Department as an outspoken journalist who reported on police corruption and brutality, in particular with regard to the Philly PD's hostile relationship with the controversial MOVE organization, culminating in a year-long police siege of the MOVE House that ended in 1978 with the shooting death of police officer James Ramp. 9 members of MOVE were charged with the murder, and during his coverage of the trial, Abu Jamal strongly criticized the actions of the police and the prosecution, including the implication that the officer was most likely killed by police crossfire. The MOVE trial concluded just a year and a half before Abu Jamal and Faulkner were found shot on that fateful night. And it was only 4 months from the federal trial of MOVE leader John Africa, whose acquittal on gun charges left the police and DA's office infuriated.
When
I'm going to stop right there. And we're going to bring in our guest, Sister Empress Phile. Peace, Sister Empress Phile. Thank you for joining us on the Fact Project this morning.
Yes, greetings to you, Brother Ra. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, so since this is your first time on the program, when we have new guests, I like to introduce them to the audience. Give for us, if you would, a little bit of your background. Who is Sister Empress Phile?
Oh, wow. Well, I don't think we're going to have time for that, but I'll just say briefly, for those who are familiar with the original and historic Million Woman March, I am actually the founder of it, and now the President General of what we call the Million Woman March Universal Movement. And we have continued over the past 2 decades the actual work and vision that we put forward 2 decades ago, and as such have taken our mission into not only other states but into other countries. And this year we will in fact commemorate not only the 28th year of our work and mission, but we will also now launch the Million Woman World March, and that will take place in Washington, D.C. Actually, we're not in September yet, so in October. And we'll also do Million Woman March Week that we do annually here in Philadelphia. That will take place from October 17th through the 27th.
Okay, so next question says, a lot of us were not born with Black consciousness. We didn't learn this in school, and we didn't learn this from religious institutions for the most part. So What was your first exposure to Black consciousness?
My first exposure to what?
To Black consciousness.
Oh, okay. Let me see. I think going down south when I was a little girl, and not understanding and knowing things, but still feeling a certain kind of way. And then later years, my brother went to Vietnam and came back, and I don't know if people are familiar with what happened there, but for Black men, it was not only horrific in terms of dealing with war, but the racism was just, unbelievable as well. And a lot of the Black men treated just very, abusively, and that puts it mildly, even though they were fighting and putting their lives in line. So my brother came back from Vietnam, and for him, it was really important to emphasize that because that's what helped to keep them, kind of not only together, but being sane, shall I say. And so, a lot of what he said and talked about was that, and introducing me to jazz music, Nina Simone, and I was like in junior high school, but even though I didn't again understand what all of that was about, it still resonated in my spirit. And this is something that I've learned about our people over the years, that even if you have not received formal education or information previously, for many of us, there's a seed that's there or a spark that's there. And once that's just tapped on a little bit, it will grow and develop to the next kinds of things. And this is what happened with our people in the past. Our people didn't have education and information and all of that years ago, but they had a spirit, that spirit of resistance. So regardless of whether you get information, read a book or get information in school, that's not really it either. Some things are innate, some things are there, some things are even genetic, passed through. And I strongly believe that because I've seen it from my own eyes. People who had no connection to anything, but yet they knew something was very wrong with the system.
Okay. Okay, now you are in the city of Philadelphia and you're working closely with the situation as it relates to Mumia Abu Jamal. For those that maybe a little bit younger, they don't know, who is Mumia Abu Jamal? What can you tell us about his life?
Well, again, and let me just say this, I always hear these things, maybe folks were younger. Well, you weren't around when Harriet Tubman was here and others. So in this day and age, information is right at your fingertips. So while most folks may not have heard of Mumia Abu Jamal, they haven't heard of a lot of things, but I can tell you that Mumia Abu Jamal is an international figure. He's considered one of the premier when it comes to political prisoners globally. He is recognized. So what I'm saying in essence is in this day and age that because of technology, folks have the capability to know whatever they want to know. And I strongly encourage people to do that because there's no excuse today. Really, there's really no excuse. If you're really interested in something, the capability for you to know about it is right there at your fingertips and then some. But to fast forward, Mumia Abu Jamal, of course, was born in Philadelphia. Briefly, his history has always been something that has focused on justice. When he was 14 years old, he was a student and was really a part of a movement that the students were implementing at that time for there to be more Black teachers, more Black history kinds of things, and other things in the schools. Then, of course, for Philadelphia, Mumia Abu Jamal was involved in helping, or it wasn't successful, but they did try to get Ben Franklin High School renamed as Malcolm X High School. And so he was involved in that. And then a little later, he literally became the Minister of Information for the Black Panther Party. And again, he was only like 15 years old. So he was writing for the newspaper. He was organizing at the age of a teenager. So that's why I'm saying it's not about, well, I'm young, no. it's about a whole lot of other stuff. And in this day and age, again, there's no excuses, really, except for a few. But to fast forward again, ultimately, Mumia proceeded in the area of journalism. And so he started studying and going to school for it and actually became a freelance journalist. And then, that turned into it becoming professional. And he began to get a lot of recognition. In fact, he was acknowledged by the Philadelphia Magazine. I forget which year, but he was one of the 10 most up and coming people in Philadelphia, as it was listed in the Philadelphia Magazine. This is how well known and how his work was just so recognized as a journalist. He worked for two major media outlets here in Philadelphia, and that being WDAS radio and also WHYY and a few others. He did public radio, so I think, that was HYY. And he did a lot of his own independent things in the context of commentaries. And of course, he wrote for various newspapers. So Mumia's history and work is very well known, particularly in Philadelphia, but again, even on a national and international level.
Okay, now you mentioned his involvement very young, very early in the Black Panther Party. And he was under surveillance and they had a file on him, as early as his teenage years. What do you know about that?
Well, I've read some of the FBI files, and needless to say, for those who, again, are not familiar with something called COINTELPRO, you really should, because it is a main situation in terms of Black history, particularly as it pertains to resistance, shall we say, fighting for our rights and things of that nature. COINTELPRO basically was started years ago, but it didn't receive a name until roughly in the 1950s. Even Dr. Martin Luther King was placed in the COINTELPRO profiling, and that's what it was. It was targeting and profiling, particularly of Black folks who protested or spoke out or was involved in an organization, and it was under the jurisdiction of the FBI, which of course was J. Edgar Hoover. Now, for those who don't know, again, J. Edgar Hoover went as far back as Marcus Garvey. He even tried to, shall we say, dismantle the UNIA, ACL, during the time of Marcus Garvey.
Oh, and I think we just lost Empress Phile. We're going to have to do our best to get her back on the line. If you're watching this live, if you're in the chat, please let me know if Sister Empress Phile is coming in clearly, because we're doing something.
Thank you for calling
different. We didn't get her. I'm going to try to see if we can make arrangements to get Sister Empress Phile back on the line. If you're watching this live, let us know in the chat if Sister Empress Phile is coming in clearly or not, because we're doing something slightly different today. And yeah, we're not getting Sister Empress Phile back on the line just yet. Either way, we are going to continue with the case and story of Mumia Abu Jamal. Now, if you saw a little bit of the video clip that I just showed, Mumia Abu Jamal, I mentioned earlier, not only interviewed Bob Marley, but he was shown in a photo also with Julius Erving, NBA basketball legend, Julius Erving. And so Mumia Abu Jamal was receiving awards for his journalism. He was on NPR, which is a national radio station. He was known for his journalism, and he was also known for his stories exposing Philadelphia police misconduct and corruption. We're trying to get Sister Empress Phile back on. Not sure what the problem is, but let me see if we can go back to oh wait, I closed that. We're gonna come back to the documentary piece on Mumia Abu Jamal, who is now dealing in prison with a health challenge. And that's the reason why we're trying to get Sister Phile back on the line so she could give us an update on the health challenge that Mumia Abu Jamal is currently dealing with. So just work with. All right, I'm just winging it here. Everybody just stay with me. They got gonna work on getting Sister Empress Phile back on the line. Just stay with us. We're gonna see if we can go to a piece of the documentary Manufacturing Guilt. This is something that's available for free online. I would advise everyone watching this to go and watch the full documentary. It's not very long. If you want some more background information on the life and story of Mumia Abu Jamal.
That was number one. I mean, why?
Including the implication that the officer was most likely killed by police crossfire. The MOVE trial concluded just a year and a half before Abu Jamal and Faulkner were found shot on that fateful night. And it was only 4 months from the federal trial of MOVE leader John Africa, whose acquittal on gun charges left the police and DA's office infuriated.
When they saw who they had, that was number one. I mean, wow, look what we done ran into. We got a panther, and we're going to kill this panther. We're going to kill this nigga here, right here.
In the early morning hours of December 9th, 1981, police officer Daniel Faulkner pulls over a rundown blue Volkswagen Beetle in the bustling red light district of Philadelphia. At 3:51 a.m., Faulkner reports over his radio that he has stopped the car at 13th and Locust Street. At the same time, Mumia Abu Jamal is parked in his cab just around the corner. He fills out his log anticipating a new fare just as the clubs are closing. He's moonlighting as a cab driver after his uncompromising approach to reporting began to cost him work as a journalist. He had recently started carrying a registered .38 Charter Arms revolver during his late-night cab runs after having recently been robbed at gunpoint. From the DA's office to Abu Jamal's most ardent defenders, all agree that Abu Jamal's brother Billy Cook, who ran a street vendor stall nearby, exited his Volkswagen and had an exchange with Faulkner. But what happened next has been the subject of heated debate ever since. What is certain is that the version put forth by the prosecution in conjunction with the Philadelphia Police Department at Abu Jamal's 1982 trial is a complete fabrication, and a willful fabrication at that. After being denied his constitutional right to defend himself at his original trial, and after heeding legal advice not to testify at his appeals hearing in 1995, Abu Jamal released a declaration in 2001 in which he details the events of that night.
I did not shoot police officer Daniel Faulkner. I had nothing to do with the killing of Officer Faulkner. I am innocent. I was filling out my log when I heard some shouting. I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw a flashing dome light of a police cruiser. This wasn't unusual. I continued to fill out my trip sheet when I heard what sounded like gunshots. I looked again into my rearview mirror and saw people running up and down Locust. I recognized my brother standing in the street, staggering and dizzy. I immediately exited the cab and ran to his screen. As I came across the street, I saw a uniformed cop turn toward me, gun in hand. Saw a flash and went down to my knees.
Now, the prosecution claimed that Abu Jamal's brother, Billy Cook, was alone in the Volkswagen. Officers James Forbes and Robert Shoemaker testified at the 82 trial that they were the first officers to arrive on the scene and that they immediately found Abu Jamal's gun as well as Faulkner's gun. Inspector Alfonso Giordano would arrive 3 minutes later and take control of the scene as the ranking officer. At pre-trial hearings, Giordano testified that Abu Jamal confessed to the murder when Giordano asked him where his gun was, and Abu Jamal replied, "I dropped it beside the car after I shot him." Cab driver Robert Chobert testified he was parked just behind Faulkner's squad car, witnessed the shooting, and identified Abu Jamal as the shooter. Prostitute Cynthia White also testified that she saw the shooting. Her testimony matched that of Robert Chobert's. All of these claims, most of which form the foundation of the prosecution's case, were manufactured.
I'm going to stop there for the moment. This is from a documentary called Manufacturing Guilt. As you can see, this is very riveting, very interesting. This is talking about the case and story of Mumia Abu Jamal, who was falsely accused of killing Philadelphia police officer Daniel Faulkner. He was wrongfully convicted of that murder and has since been in prison. There are a lot of inconsistencies in the situation and in the story. The bullet that killed Daniel Faulkner could not possibly have been fired by Mumia Abu Jamal. I think an accurate forensics will prove that. This documentary goes more in depth into the nuances of the story. But either way, if I could just jump ahead for a minute, the situation right now concerning Mumia Abu Jamal has gotten very dire because Mumia is now in very poor health, and he has had any number of health challenges subsequent to his incarceration. He was fortunate at some point to have a major heart surgery, which I'm surprised they even permitted that to happen. So he had heart surgery. He has been diagnosed with diabetes, which comes from food. So we don't know what they're feeding some of our incarcerated comrades in prison, but diabetes, especially if it's type 2, is brought on by diet. And so he's been diagnosed with diabetes. And I think as a result of the diabetes diagnosis, he is now suffering from vision loss. And he also had COVID-19 twice while incarcerated. Now, the situation surrounding the vision loss has progressively gotten worse. And Mumia right now is in need of surgery so that he can restore his eyesight. The surgery can help to reverse some of the vision loss and can help to restore his eyesight. So the campaign right now is to get Mumia to get the immediate emergency medical attention that he needs to correct the problem that he's currently having with his vision. This is a flyer that was shared by Empress Phile, who her line dropped. We're not certain what happened to her, but we're going to go forward anyway with the flyer and some of the information. It says Mumia's eyesight endangered. Mumia's eyesight is endangered. He is experiencing irreversible vision loss that can lead to permanent blindness. His sight is threatened by 2 conditions, which are correctable. Now, this is what makes this an emergency, because the vision problem that Mumia is dealing with can be corrected, but it has to be corrected within a certain amount of time, so the clock is ticking. If it is not corrected in that allotted amount of time, Mumia Abu Jamal could be permanently blind if he does not get the care that he needs. The Pennsylvania Department of Correction and its contracted health care provider is in quotes, WealthPath, have allowed his vision to deteriorate to the point that he is functionally blind. Now, a lot of the activists that are working in the situation on the case involving Mumia Abu Jamal say that many of his health conditions and his medical situations, a lot of these things can be reversed, but the system is deliberately allowing Mumia to slowly deteriorate in prison. Many people say that this is assassination by medical neglect. And so some of these health challenges and the fact that they've been able to persist are what people are alluding to when they talk about assassination by medical neglect. They, meaning the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, are slow walking him into blindness by delaying for months his treatment for his post-contract condition and the recently diagnosed diabetic retinopathy. So the problem with the vision is being caused by diabetic retinopathy. Now, the call to action, because here in the Fact Project, we don't just like to give out a whole bunch of information. We also like to engage in some activism. The great Frederick Douglass once said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. I add a layer to that and say, if there is no activism, there is no progress. I have here on the screen a flyer with the information for anyone who might want to get involved. Anyone want to get involved can call SCI Mahanoy, which is the correctional facility in the state of Pennsylvania that Mumia Abu Jamal is being held in. You can call that number. The number is 570-773-2158. That number again, SCI Mahanoy, where Mumia is being held, is 570-773-2158. Let me tell you what the script is too when you call the number. There is a second number, Pennsylvania Department of Corrections. The person you want to speak there is a one Miss Hardy. Miss Hardy can be reached at 717-728-2573. That number again to reach Miss Hardy at the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections to request and demand that Mumia get the immediate medical treatment that he needs is 717-728-2573. Now, the last number is also for SCI Mahanoy. Oh, no, it's the same number. So SCI Mahanoy, you can call 570-773-2158. That number again is 570-773-2158. And we are requesting that the prison allow Mumia Abu Jamal to get the immediate medical treatment that he needs. When you call, the script is, my name is X, whatever your name is. And I'm calling from, you're going to say what city you're calling from. I am calling in regard to Mumia Abu Jamal, also known as Wesley Cook, inmate AM 8335. He is suffering from dire vision loss, which can be treated easily, or else he will lose his eyesight entirely. I demand that this treatment happen immediately. That is the script. We're asking the community now to call those phone numbers and give them that script or something similar to that. You can come up with your own script. You could say, hey, I'm a concerned citizen and I'm demanding that Mumia Abu Jamal get, immediate medical treatment that he needs to save and restore his vision. I say it on here all the time. There is strength in numbers, and we're a lot stronger together than we will ever be separate. And we have people power, but we don't necessarily understand people power because we're not organized. And organized people can do anything. And working together works. In fact, working together and being organized is how the people, the activists, managed to get Mumia removed from death row and have his sentence commuted to life in prison without parole. Many more people are trying to fight to see that Mumia gets a new trial, a fair trial. And then there's some of us that are calling for his release. He's done his time. He's been incarcerated since 1981, actually. And, the average amount of time a person will serve for a murder is 16 years. Many of us, myself included, believe that Mumia Abu Jamal was wrongfully convicted. He's not guilty of the crime that he was accused of. And so many of us are demanding his immediate release. assuming a person killed a police officer, they would have probably done their time and been released from prison by now. We don't believe Mumia Abu Jamal killed a police officer, so we're requesting his immediate release. He's been incarcerated since 1981, so we're looking at the better part of 46 years. We're on the dark side of 50 years in terms of his incarceration. He's obviously going to physically get older. He's facing health challenges. There is absolutely no need for them to continue to hold on to this man at this point. So again, the call to action, we have to take direct action if we're going to help to save the life, the health, and the vision of Mumia Abu Jamal, one of our most outstanding journalists, one of our most outstanding broadcast journalists, was involved with NPR, received awards for his journalism. This is prior to his arrest and conviction. And many people say the reason he was arrested and convicted and was being held was to stop him from exposing police corruption and some of the improprieties that the Philadelphia Police Department were engaged in. The number, again, for those people that want to get involved in the campaign, to call SCI Mahanoy, call 570-773-2158. That number, again, is 570-773-2158. You can also call the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections. You're going to call a one Miss Hardy at 717-728-2573. That number again is 717-728-2573. I'm going to see if I can end on the last couple of minutes with a little bit more of the documentary Manufacturing Guilt, a short film about of Mumia Abu Jamal. Just give me a moment. I'm gonna share my screen. I want everybody, when they get off the live today, to make those phone calls and rally around Mumia Abu Jamal, who was a journalist that went above and beyond to inform his people. We say here in the F.A.C.T Project, the ultimate goal should be to bring about self-sufficient control for ourselves, for our people. And in order to do that, we must have self-sufficient control of our basic human survival needs. That's our food, clothes, shelter, education, medication, and self-defense. If Mumia was conveying information with respect to his journalism, then he was part of the education piece. And we need education and we need information if we're going to go forward and bring about Black life. Life is LIFE, liberation, independence, freedom, and empowerment for Black people. Shout out to Brother Shamari in the city of Philadelphia. Mumia Abu Jamal was part of that equation as it relates to education and doing his best to try to inform the people. Let's see if we can do a little bit more of the documentary before we close out. I'm going to give those numbers again at the end. So everybody get your pens and your paper ready. We're going to see if we can give those numbers out so that we can call the prison and we can call the Pennsylvania Department of Correction to see if we can demand the immediate medical treatment that Mumia needs to maintain and save his vision.
All of these claims, most of which form the foundation of the prosecution's case, were manufactured. Let's first look at the claim that Billy Cook was alone in the Volkswagen. After Faulkner radioed that he stopped a car, he followed with, quote, "On second thought, send me a wagon." This request for backup clearly indicates that there was more than one person in the car. Then in 1995, Captain Edward D'Amato admitted that a driver's license permit for a man named Arnold Howard, a business partner of Cook's, was found on Faulkner. Again, strong evidence that there was more than one person in Billy Cook's Volkswagen. In 1982, the police and prosecution illegally kept this evidence from Abu Jamal and his defense attorney. Why were they suppressing this evidence of other potential suspects in the shooting of Daniel Faulkner? Now, what about the immediate recovery of the weapons? Radio transmissions from the scene to Central Command over the next 15 minutes contradict the testimony of Officers Forbes and Shoemaker. No officer reports immediately finding any weapons. In fact, nearly 5 minutes later, officers on the scene report that Faulkner's gun is missing. It was 14 minutes before it was reported that the suspect's gun was recovered and that they had the doer in custody. There is no report that Abu Jamal confessed. There is no report that a witness or witnesses identified anyone as the shooter. Prior to the arrival of the police mobile forensics unit, freelance photographer Pedro Polikoff arrives, moving freely through the crime scene and snapping off more than 24 photos. These photos show, contrary to police regulations, that the area was not properly secured to preserve evidence. The photographs also show Officer Forbes walking around carrying both guns in his bare hand. This lack of regard for forensic evidence looks more like willful intent to manipulate a crime scene when you consider the following. Police reported no fingerprints on the guns. No tests were done on Abu Jamal's hands for gunpowder residue. Contrary to police regulations, Officer Forbes failed to immediately turn over the weapons to the mobile crime unit. In fact, the weapons were not turned over for 2 hours. Later, the police falsely described the bullet from Faulkner's head wound as too damaged and deteriorated to do a comparison ballistics test with a bullet fired from Abu Jamal's gun. But photographs of the bullet clearly show the identifying characteristics, its twists, the number of lands and grooves, and the relative widths. Instead, the prosecution claimed that the bullet was, quote, consistent with one fired from Abu Jamal's Charter Arms .38 revolver. Although police ballistics expert Anthony Paul admitted this is true of, quote, multiple millions of guns. During appeals, when Abu Jamal and his legal team demanded independent testing to determine if the bullet was fired from Abu Jamal's gun, their request was denied, first by Judge Albert Sabo, and then later by federal court judge William Yawn. What all of this clearly illustrates is that, in fact, there is no physical evidence that Abu Jamal shot Faulkner, or that his gun was the murder weapon.
I will stop there. Again, I'm going to send everybody to the internet if you want to see the rest of that, so you can learn more about the case of Mumia Abu Jamal. Either way, I'm going to try to give those numbers again because we're about to close out. You can call SCI Mahanoy 570-773-2158. That number again is 570-773-2158. Or you can call the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, and you're asking to speak to a one Miss Hardy. The phone number is 717-728-5273. That number again is 717-728-5273. I'm going to give a shout out to everyone in the chat. Thuzla Doom is asking me, what are my top 3 MCs? I think that's a subject we're going to have to come back to another day, only because I think the top 3, there's different eras. And so the top 3 would have to be different for different eras. I'm not sure if that question is asking me of all time or of different eras. But either way, we're going to come back to that subject another day. Again, I'm encouraging everyone to call those numbers and demand immediate medical attention for our freedom fighter and revolutionary brother Mumia Abu Jamal. Give a shout out to DJ Tiger for allowing us space to do these kind of conversations. And I would encourage everyone to tune us in and watch the Fight Project again next week. Call those numbers. Peace.